This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
We're building our parts here because we use them, because we have to put them on our cars. So we know that every single thing we build works. And not only do we build them, we have to test them. And if it ain't good enough for us, we're going to redo it until it is.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Todd Ersley with my Shop Assist. And today I've got with me half of the Ring Brothers team. So this is Jim Ring of the Ring Brothers, and they kind of been known for restoring cars and making really cool builds, and manufacturers will come to them to have them build cars and do SEMA stuff, and also they've done a very fantastic job of manufacturing products. So they've got their own line of vehicle specific products, and I'll give him the opportunity to kind of explain the parts that they make. But really excited to have Jim on the podcast with us, because I've seen a lot of their products over the years on cars that are built by a lot of the restoration shops that use our software. So Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Hey, thanks for having me. We finally got some sun here today. It's been actually a week ago today. It was we had a foot of snow, which is unheard of in
everything
April.
I've been seeing pictures from my Wisconsin and Milwaukee friends, the Great Lakes area, and they're like, what is going on? It is not springtime, and it doesn't feel like it.
It's crazy, but I'm glad to see the sun. It's actually about 60 degrees out here now, and I'm actually sitting out in the grass looking at the first dandelion I've seen this year. So it's pretty fun.
Well, things are taking a turn for the better, huh?
They have.
Well, we like to get the podcast kind of started off with your background. I know you've been in the industry for, a long time, you and your brother both, but, kind of give us a brief rollback of what you were doing as a kid. Were you kind of destined to be doing car stuff, or were you kind of headed down a different path when you were growing up?
Growing up, when we grew up, obviously I was born in 1964. You can do the math from there, but, there was no doubt things were a little simpler back then, but Mike and I were into everything growing up, and I'm talking from, making rockets out of my dad's 12-gauge shells and Tampexes, believe it or not, to we could never get the parachute to open, but we've done so much, stuff. We were always, if it had a lawnmower, we'd tear mowers apart. We'd basically, anything that had to do with something different besides the school book, we were doing it. But, early on, we figured out, obviously when we were 15, we knew that we couldn't go chase the girls, I guess, without a car. And so we bought cars before we were even of age to drive, and, tried to fix them up in my mother's basement. And, it was just a long story. My dad actually raised 7 kids. I'm the youngest of 7, and raised us. He had a Skelly gas station. And so we were always around oil and gas, and it was just something we really got into. And, over the years, we always had a passion for cars, and it didn't really matter what it was. It was as long as it had a motor in it and it ran. Mm-hmm. And then as we got older, actually I was in the operating engineers, the union for a while. I was also a carpenter and did a bunch of other stuff. And I was actually right after I got married, I moved to Denver, Colorado with my new wife and spent a year out there. And then my sister and my brother were both working for an environmental company. And they asked that we move back to Chicago and work for this company. So I was managing some projects for a company out of Chicago called SOS International. And just knew I didn't want to raise my kids in Chicago, wanted to get back home. And I was going through a paper one time down there, and I found a 69 Camaro Indy Pace car. and it was $5,000, which was a tremendous amount of money, and I didn't have a nickel, So I went down to the corner bank, which was right down the street from where we were living, my wife and I, and didn't have any money, and walked in there, and I asked them to borrow $5,000 to buy this car, and they actually gave it to me.
Oh, Jesus!
And yeah, it was. So I went and bought that car. Brought it home, tore it apart in my mom's basement on the weekends. I couldn't get out of Chicago early enough on a Friday to get home and work on that car, and actually got the car done and ended up selling it for quite a bit of money back in them days. I think I ended up getting close to $30,000 for that car.
What did you do to it?
I completely restored the thing from bottom to top, and I made a little money on it, and I thought, you know what, this is what I want to do. So I talked my wife into quitting a great job, my great job, and we moved back home. And I actually bought an old car dealership, which was just a tiny little car dealership in our small town that went out of business. And I ended up buying that building, and I started my first shop. And I actually started with one of my best friends. He's also in Denver now. So we started restoring cars and also fixing collision work and, anything obviously to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was pretty tough back then, but we managed to get through. And then finally, we were doing some Ford GTs for Stopper Classics. We did early on, we painted the winningest 289 Cobra drag car for George Stoffer. And we started doing some interesting cars, which kind of just kept the ball rolling and the passion. And so then Garrett ended up leaving, my buddy. He couldn't take it any longer. And I had a Subway that wanted to buy my building, and they purchased that car dealership from me. And I went down the road literally about 2 miles and bought a piece of property and built a new building and started a collision shop.
And what kind of year or time frame was this?
That had to be about, I think, in 91.
Okay.
When I built the new building. And, misery likes company, so I asked my brother to come home and be in business with me. And,
yeah.
And I tried to retain 49% from all my sweat labor, but he said, if you don't give me 50%, I ain't coming. So, yeah.
And so just kind of, I wanted to ask, how did you fund building a building? You bought a car dealership, and then, you sold that. It sounds like to somebody that wanted that space. Did you have to get a bank loan, or did you raise money with your brother coming on board, or how did you go about, affording that building?
No, actually, I didn't have any money, and I ended up selling. I think when I bought that building originally, when I come back, I bought that dealership for, I believe I paid like $70,000 or something for it, or $68,000, which was, just a tremendous amount of money at that time for us or for me and my wife. And when I ended up selling it, I think I ended up selling it for like $170,000. So I had a little, it was a good uptick that took place from buying and selling that building. And after that, I wanted a lot bigger building, and I ended up getting a loan at the bank for our first building, which is, right now our office is in our collision side of things, which is actually where all the body and paint, and it's kind of half the building's pretty dirty from the dust. But, and then as we grew and started building these cars, it was so crowded in that one building trying to do collision and doing a lot of the custom cars that we ended up building a second building behind it, which was, I think that building is like 3,500 or 4,000 square feet. And that was basically just set up to do all the fabrication and at that time assembly too, which, we'd fab everything and then it would go to the next building for the body and paint and come back and then assemble it in that building.
So was the collision side? I mean, to me, that usually means that's what's paying the bills. There's no doubt about it. Collision was one of the best things that I ended up keeping here. We talked a lot about getting rid of the collision side and just doing all custom work. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, is not getting rid of the collision side of things, because obviously that's a day-to-day business that
generates a pretty good income, and it was just smart to keep it.
Yeah, is that because you're working with like an insurance company that's willing to write a check versus, just somebody off the street that's coming to get work done?
There's no doubt about it. When you obviously doing collision, you have estimating software, and you know what you're getting into. You know the damage, you know what you're getting into, and basically it gave you the opportunity to beat the time that they gave you to do it, to actually make a little more money and put money in your pocket, and that's how the game works. If they allow you 3 hours to fix a dent and you do it in an hour, obviously you made a couple hours for free.
Yeah.
So it was just good, and we were good at collision. So it was always a good thing, and we didn't want to get rid of it. And we still do it today. It's a big part of our business.
Yeah, that always amazes me. We've got, at where our shop is located, there's a couple collision places, and the hail dent repair, that seems to be the cash cow in our area. It's amazing. The paintless PDR, paintless dent repair.
Yeah. It's it was just a good thing. And then obviously we started building cars, and we were always building them for ourselves, and we're big Mustang guys, so we built many Mustangs, and we'd build one and sell one, and then finally we figured out that we hated the way the hood hinges worked, and the door handles, and we said, well, there's got to be something better. So we'd actually build our own. We'd make our own hood hinges, and we'd show up at a car show, and somebody'd say, man, I'm really cool, can I buy some of them? And finally, after about the fifth person asked if they could buy them, the light bulb went off and said, you know what, we can manufacture this stuff, and there's residual after these cars are gone. We're still selling parts that we designed and manufactured for them, and I guess that was the start of our parts business.
The manufacturing side.
Yeah. So actually 4 years ago. Oh God, it's probably been longer than that. It was about almost 5 years ago. We built another building behind the fab shop, which was a 6,000 square foot building that we ended up buying all new CNC equipment for. We've got all Haas equipment. I've got actually 5 mills now. I've got 1 5-axis.
Yeah, so you guys have really stepped it up.
We have, and our parts side of things, we manufacture, I think we've got over 1,000 SKUs right now, which is, we continue to develop new product every day.
Yeah,
I've got
when did you guys start making products? Like, was it early 2000s or?
I would say it was probably mid 2000s. We actually started manufacturing, and then we found at that point that we would do all the design in-house and send it out and have other people manufacture them. So I ended up getting rid of my equipment at that time, which was a huge mistake on my part, because I had no control over my own destiny at that point. So by obviously purchasing and bringing all of our equipment back in-house and all of our manufacturing back in-house, I had the ability to control inventory and just it's just a better life for me. Obviously, you have the cost of the very expensive equipment and tooling and software and everything that goes with it, but it does control your destiny a little bit.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the location that you're in. You guys are not in a big metropolis, like a big metroplex area. How are you getting people to buy cars that you restored, or how was there enough business in there for the collision side to to keep the doors open and to be making money? Can you kind of walk us through kind of the location aspect?
Yeah, we grew up in a town of 600 people, 688.
Okay, I think my apartment building has that many people.
Yeah, and we ended up moving. Well, I did. Mike's still in Plain. Plain was a town of 688 people. That's where my dad actually had the gas station. And I actually moved 7 miles south of there, which is, we ended up purchasing my wife's parents' house from them. And so I live in the big town of Spring Green, which is about 1,600. So about double the Plain, which is not a lot of people. No. And it even blows my mind to see, how far we've came from a small town. And I think it had a lot to do with Mike and I did a lot of traveling. I mean, we'd take some of our cars, all over the country to shows and events, and obviously we had magazine coverage on, because I felt like we were a little outside the ordinary at that time. I remember one time we took a 68 Camaro that we had redone in the shop, and we cut that car all up.
Mm-hmm.
And we had it there, and half the people loved it and half of it hated it, but it was really funny. It was like they were still talking about you, but it was, they were like, what the hell would you ruin a perfectly good Camaro for and do that, you know? So and it seemed like over the years after that, it seemed like everybody started changing, heavily modifying this stuff. And you know, obviously it's really hard to go to a car show today and almost find an original car. You know what I mean? It's just kind of the direction everything's headed. I think it's a good direction for, you know, obviously not for the purist, but for a guy that wants the look and you know, that nostalgia of their car they had years ago, but yet the technology with you know, updated brakes, updated motors, it starts, it stops. It's just a lot more pleasure to drive. And people today are spoiled because, you know, they'll get in their new Chevy Malibu or their new Porsche, and then they'll hop in an old Camaro or a Mustang, you know, an early car that's original, and they're just
so much different.
And it's hard to believe you could even hold them cars on the road back then after driving these new cars today. I mean, shit, a new Chevy pickup will run circles around any of the old Performance Z28s or any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
There's no doubt these cars today with the look and all of the technology put in them are 100 times more fun to drive than any original one I've ever been in. So,
was there ever a point, you know, with the Ring Brothers business that you guys were like, man, I just don't think we're going to get through, you know, like, did you ever contemplate just kind of closing the doors and doing something different? And, you know, how did you move forward from that experience?
Honestly, I think what got us to where we are today is true grit and probably not being smart enough to figure out if something wasn't going to work.
It's not a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's with all honesty. I think everything in our life was because of true grit, and I guess that says something. But you know, we were blessed to have people, you know, obviously enough people like what we were doing, and today we're actually doing cars for people all over the world. I mean, I did one for a Russian client that got shipped over there. We just finished a car that we had at SEMA this past year, 69 Dodge Charger that just got shipped to London. We're doing a 69 Camaro right now for a guy from Belgium. So, I mean, our reach right now is mind-boggling. And, you know, we get calls and people, you know, almost on a daily basis to talk about doing other things. I just took a 63 Lincoln Continental, basically the same car Kennedy got shot in, that he wants the car to run and drive and stop, and which will be a tremendously big project because they're
big cars.
There's a lot of parts to one of them cars. I'm doing 3 1970 to 72 Blazers. Actually, I've got 6 of them here, but I'm doing 3 of them. One for a guy from Omaha, Nebraska, one for a guy from Ohio area, and then one for a couple down in Florida. I've got a 69 Mustang Fastback that we're doing for a big plastics guy out of Baraboo. That's out of Wisconsin. I've got several projects going right now.
Yes, it sounds like you've got like a dozen cars kind of in the works at
we
any
do.
given
We've
time.
got, and none of these cars have been asked a million times, why don't you just build your own cars and sell them? And honestly, it's because you got a lot more in them than basically what the market will bear.
Mm-hmm.
Although our cars have done very well at a lot of these bigger auctions like Barrett-Jackson and stuff. And it's kind of cool to see. We built a car for a couple out of Arizona, and it was a 70 Mustang Fastback called Dragon, and the car was just a gorgeous car, and they were so afraid of that car to even take it out of their garage and drive it because they didn't want to put a chip in it, that they couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, that's
so they ended up taking it to Barrett-Jackson, and it sold. And actually, the guy that bought that car was Paul Mitchell's son.
Okay. Yep.
And he has it in his car collection. Actually, that's kind of cool. But
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, do you think it's because you really can't make money on a restoration? I hear your story of you buying a 69 Camaro Pace car with a bank loan and then making money on it. Like that to me just doesn't compute. You have to find somebody that wants to build something and do it for them.
That's exactly right. And you know what? Most of these cars, obviously, for anybody average, it's definitely probably out of reach. But there's a lot of people that can afford really nice stuff. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, there's a lot of people that'll pay $2, $3, $5, $10 million for a painting that they hang on a wall. So people think it's absurd to actually spend $500,000 on a car that they can park in their garage, and I don't understand that. But my point is, there's people that have the means to do it, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. That you need lots of those people.
With that being said, I think the cool part of it for the industry and for us is the fact that, we may be building somebody a $500,000 or $750,000 vehicle, but with that being said, we're also have the ability to create a lot of new products and things that went into that vehicle that turn out to be a residual and be able to sell to other people. Yeah, they may not be able to have the whole car, but they can have some of the really cool components that we developed for that car just because we had the opportunity to do that car.
So what's something that you're doing right now that you've got, that's got you really fired up, like a new project or maybe some new parts you've got developing?
We're actually in the process of developing a whole bunch of different products that I really don't want to talk about. Obviously,
secrets.
Well, it's the problem is we spend tens of thousands of dollars developing one product, and hell, it seems like we can't even get it out there 2 weeks, and they're already stealing it. Mm-hmm. And it's really sad the way that works. And I know everybody says patents, but the problem with a patent is it takes, when you got big companies stealing from a little guy, they will bury you chasing them down on a patent.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had friends in the industry I got one guy in particular, he spent about $300,000 trying to protect one of his patents, and in the end, he ended up getting about $30,000 for it.
Jesus,
he's like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, it's not even worth it at that point.
Yeah. So, you know what? Our philosophy is just stay ahead of them, be creative, keep coming out with new stuff, and let them chase you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of, honestly, kind of the advice that I give people as well that ask about that, because a lot of our shop owners, they think patent and it's a great idea. And we've had some guests on the podcast that have a whole bunch of patents. They, both have utility patents, which are a little easier or much easier to get,
exactly.
and then actual
much
patents,
easier.
And they, express the process to go through it. But, those people they're large companies and they've got, lawyers on retainer all the time going out and attacking people that copy their products. So it's they've got a whole wing of their company that does patents. And so, for a little guy, and little being like under 100 employees, it just is not very feasible. And so it's staying ahead of it, getting ahead of it, doing something cool and continuing to improve it seems to be, the best way to do it. So I can understand trying to keep it a little bit a secret of what you got working on if you're worrying about people copying your stuff. So how are you, what are you doing to kind of elevate your products and your image to people interested in buying, a hood hinge, for instance?
Well, first off is because we are the developers of these, everybody's doing our hinges now. I mean, you can pull up the internet and find 100 different people building hinges, and they're all because it started right here. But here's what I can tell you about Ring Brothers. We're building our parts here because we use them, because we have to put them on our cars. So we know that every single thing we build works. And not only do we build them, we have to test them. And if it ain't good enough for us, we're going to redo it until it is. Mm-hmm. And the problem is a lot of people will just take a GM hinge or a Ford hinge or anything and either buy one of ours, reverse engineer it and copy it, or they'll just take one off of a car and try to engineer it themselves. But most of them guys are just machinists and not actually mechanics and guys that use their own product. Mm-hmm. So they don't understand both sides of the thing. They don't understand that on a 70 Chevelle or a 69 Camaro, that they were all hand-built cars. And they don't know that there has to be some tolerances and things because there ain't three of them that are alike. You know how them old cars were built. Some of them had 3 shims in the fender. Some of them had no shims in the fender. They're not like cars today. It's really easy to make a perfect part for a perfect car. Like any of the new cars today that are all CAD built. If you need a washer or you need a shim, something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for all the early cars and a lot of the stuff we manufacture parts for. So with that being said, it's a lot more than just reverse engineering stuff. And some people out there of the audience are probably thinking right now, well, GM did it. They built one hinge, and here, let me explain to you about that. They built their hinges out of stamped steel parts that actually have forgiveness and flex to them. So when you pulled the hood down and something wasn't just right,
that hinge would tweak itself.
That hinge would tweak itself to move into position where it had to. But when you're doing a precision part that has all ball bearings and bronze bushings and everything that is completely true with no flex to it, you have to engineer in a way to get around the imperfections of what the car was.
Yeah. And I have been told, I didn't get to experience it myself, but been told that the muscle car, the older generation of cars, the body gap was not something you talked about. It was just, if the panels closed and it looked okay, that was good. That was good enough for the production line.
There's no doubt about it. These cars that are building today are just light years ahead of what it was.
Well, on that, let's take a real quick break here, and then we'll be right back.
We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial.
So we're back with Jim Ring of the Ring Brothers, and you've been telling us about the types of services you do and kind of the parts you make, but can you give us kind of a broad sense of how big is the shop now? How many square feet do you think you have total? And you said you've kind of bought and built it up as you go, correct?
We did. Obviously, I wish if I could look back now and do it all again, I wish it was all under one roof. We have 3 separate buildings, totaling about 15,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. And obviously, they're completely 3 separate buildings that are, I would say, 25 feet apart. So it's something that I wish I could have under one roof, but that's just the way it took place. I'm in obviously we're in a small town. I think a lot of people in this town don't even know what we do here. They see a lot of cool cars and stuff hanging around, but for the most part, I don't think they have any idea what goes on behind the doors.
How many people do you have employed there?
Right at the moment, I think we're right at 15.
And so that's kind of mixed between, and does that include the collision side as well?
Yeah, it does. It includes my collision guys, my fabrication guys, obviously my machine guys, Mike and I, and there's a couple part-timers that we obviously. I like to do my part with the schools, the high schools, and get kids involved, so we have them come over and help out.
That's very cool. Yeah, and so are you using the collision and that side for the custom body work as well? Are those guys able to do the paint and body work?
That is correct. Yep. Okay. All of the custom work does take place in the same collision center. Obviously, the fabrication's in a different building and the assembly is in a different building, but it all goes through the same body and paint spot.
So kind of walk us through the progression of developing parts, because going from, doing a handful of cars, maybe a couple cars a year, and doing a lot of collision work, how did you step into actually developing products? Like getting CAD software. I mean, that's a trade in and of itself. And then the big step of buying a CNC machine. Can you kind of walk us through the steps of ramping up the production side?
Obviously, anybody can draw anything on a napkin, and I think that happened a lot here over the years. We were just trying to be clever and come up with new things. And you know what? This industry is like, there's no doubt it's like walking a tightrope, because if you're afraid to fall, then you better not get on the rope. And trust me, we've fell many times. And so I think if you don't get on the rope, though, and are not willing to fall, I honestly think that you're probably not pushing the envelope as far as you can or as far as you should. And we've certainly, I think, have done that and made a lot of tremendously bad decisions.
Yeah.
But I think with that being said, it also got us to some of the ones that actually did work, and you know, it just led us into a new direction. But our parts side of things is a big part of what we do here. As a matter of fact, as our bodies get older and wear out, it's definitely something that we're going to just try to move into even more. You know, I don't know how many cars our bodies got left in us. You know, I'm 54 this year, and my brother's going to be 55, and it's really tough to find great help in the fabrication side of things, and the, you know, technical, no problem. Our engineer in our parts side he's a young guy. He's phenomenal. He went to school at Milwaukee School of Engineering. He just, I mean, I can hand him anything on a napkin, he can make it.
He can draw it, yeah.
Yeah, Matt is pretty phenomenal. As a matter of fact, I think Matt is so good that we actually got invited to Mike and I and Matt got invited to speak in front of 5,000 people at the Microsoft SolidWorks convention this year.
Oh, very cool.
And that was, I'll tell you what, talk about not being the smartest guy in the room there. It was pretty fun. But you know, our parts thing, we continue to come up with new ones. You know, we were just talking about patents earlier. I come up with I think a very clever wheel cleaning device that nobody's ever seen before. And the only reason I did it is because my wife drives this little 2010 Audi Q5, and she's always telling me she wants her inner hoops cleaned, and there's only two ways to do it. You either shove the old brush in there or shove the rag in there and move it around, or you take the wheel off.
Yep.
I had come up with a device that I do have a patent on it that nobody's seen yet, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. But it's literally you can clean all four of your wheels in literally 30 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds great. I need that. I had a car washing business in high school, and that would have been fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty cool device. But again, it's always, I guess my mind is always racing, and we've got some very talented people that think outside the box, and you know, we've been blessed with the people we got. I couldn't do it without them. I've got a great bunch of employees.
So how did you go about finding these people? You know, you mentioned earlier you were kind of bringing in high school kids to, you know, help do stuff and, you know, educate them on the industry, but how were you getting, you know, your custom fabricator or your CNC, you know, machinist or the CAD guy? How were you going about finding those employees?
You know, honestly, it seems that they've, for the most part, have found us. And,
okay.
And I want to attribute that to the fact that I think they thought, or they drove by or been here or seen, you know, maybe some of the cars or some of the things we're doing, and just thought maybe it was really cool and they wanted to be a part of it. And that's really kind of how it all went. I mean, I can't think of any of my employees besides a couple from high school that weren't, you know, didn't come in and just were excited to be a part of what we were doing.
So you were getting applicants randomly that were also very enthusiastic and willing to learn. Did you have to train them on anything, or were they pretty much proficient in their skills already?
No, obviously, as a business owner and as a car guy, and you know, you kind of want them to think the way you think, and there's no harm in having them think the way they want to think, because they come up with a lot of cool stuff, but they just tend to fit right in the hole. You know, it's I've got an employee here, a fabricator named Sean. He's been with me forever, and he's phenomenal. I mean, he can't get enough of this place. He's here 6 days a week, and
Nice.
I can't keep him away. And he's not young anymore either, but he just loves it that much. And I had another guy that was working for a big glass outfit, Cardinal Glass in Spring Green, that he did a lot of fabrication for their lines. He built a lot of equipment stuff, and at heart, he's a car guy, and he had come over and asked to have a job, and we hired him, and he turned out to be awesome. I mean, he's a great fabricator. Now he just loves it. He loves coming to work. He loves what he does. He loves being a part of it.
So it sounds like you guys have a pretty fun and open working relationship, just work environment. Sounds like a good place to be.
We really, really do. I mean, we have no problem with people coming and going as they please. Obviously, we've got to get what we have to have done, but we've got it's not a prison by any means. These guys, I think, respect what they're doing, and I also respect what they need to do on their personal time. And I think it's just really no stress place.
Okay.
The only person that's got stress is Mike and I.
Yeah. The big picture guys, they're thinking about the future.
Exactly.
So on that, do you guys have kind of a formal or maybe an informal business plan for Ring Brothers?
I'm really hoping that I can turn this over to my employees someday. I know my engineer, Matt, is very excited to have be a part of the parts side of things. And, I've got 3 daughters of my own that want nothing to do with this place,
Okay.
nothing to do with cars. And, Mike has 2 sons. One of them, one of them's going to school engineering also, same one Matt went to. And I don't think they want anything to do with it. The only possible person that would want anything to do with this place is Mike's daughter, Stevie. Her name's Stevie, and she's, I think she kind of likes this stuff. So Who knows? Who knows what the outcome's going to be?
What about, managing your employees? Are you delegating tasks to them, throughout the day, or, what are you doing to kind of guide them in the direction to get stuff done at the shop?
Well, obviously the collision business pretty much has their own worksheet, and they know what's got to be done. As far as the fabrication side of things, we try to do that the same way, and we don't just come in and start winging it. Basically, we start every one of these projects with a design concept and a lot of thought and a lot of talk. And over the years, we've obviously, like I said, we've done enough vehicles now to know what not to use and know what works. So when we find things that work, we continue to use them. That's why we partner with a lot of good companies like, obviously 3M and BASF Corporation and Flowmaster, and we've got a lot of great partners in the industry. And again, if it works, why fix it? You know, if it ain't broke.
And are you billing your customers on like a bi-weekly basis?
We do. They're billed bi-weekly for the builds, and obviously there's upfront costs because most of them want us to find the car, and so obviously you got to go buy a car, and a lot of these cars are real upfront loaded, and what I mean by that is you got to deal with the suspension and engine and driveline and everything up front to build everything around it, and it's just best to build the car around what you're using instead of there's a lot of other shops that end up doing a lot of body modifications and paint and get to the end final assembly and figure out that, holy shit, I got to drill 2 holes here and 1 here.
You got to pre-assemble the whole car before you do anything.
The car's got to be built and then tore back apart. So that's correct.
So what is if you can, kind of shed some light on the revenue breakdown of the business? How much of it, maybe just in a percentage, like a broad percentage, comes from the collision side and then the custom building side and then the parts side?
Well, I would say our parts side is half of our business. So I would say custom cars would be probably, I would say 35%. Collision would be, 15%, and the parts side of things would be 50%.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty impressive with the parts. It sounds like you've really built up, the notoriety. And so I'll give you kind of an opportunity to kind of explain, the different genres of parts that you guys create for, whatever cars that you guys are building parts for.
we do everything from fasteners to we're even coming out with a new line of titanium fasteners. We do a lot of light switches, like toggle switches, window switches. We do obviously hood hinges, trunk hinges, door hinges. We do a lot of door handles, exterior door handles, door hinges that we've developed. We do a lot of carbon fiber pieces, a lot of hoods, a lot of, matter of fact, the Russian client, we built 100% carbon fiber 65 Mustang Fastback.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Complete car. Every component on the car was carbon. Doors, quarters, roof, trunk, everything.
So how did you get like carbon fiber knowledge? You know, that's kind of a whole nother realm of performance car stuff.
Actually, we met a company out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin that early on, and we wanted to start lightening up some of the components we were doing, and met them people, and over the years had a really good relationship with them. And so we used to build all of the bucks by hand. I mean, we build the entire hood out of steel or aluminum and then pull a mold from that part. And we found now that, obviously with the use of scanning devices and SolidWorks, and there's so many new tools out there that we physically can build the thing on a computer and machine the buck out of a large chunk of high-density foam and then pull molds from that instead of all of the upfront labor of physically building it.
Yeah,
first.
those giant CNC routers for building those bucks are really cool.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You're either doing it out of the wood or the foam, and then making the mold out of that.
Yeah, the funny part is we used to make everything by hand, so we'd physically build it, the part, and then pull the mold. So definitely technology is changing the way we manufacture. So it's pretty cool. You know, we've had companies even like S&S Cycle, who's big motorcycle people. I think anybody that's into bikes knows who S&S is, and they've asked us to come and drop these new Harley motorcycles off and help us develop a new air cleaner, a new design for stuff like that. And I think our guys here are really good at that. We've definitely helped a lot of different companies on product design and development. So,
man, yeah, that's very cool. So what methods are you guys using now to kind of promote your products? Both the builds and the individual products themselves.
Actually, we hired a company called Con Media out of California. Dan Con is the owner of that company, and he's done just an amazing job with obviously getting our name out there and promoting our products and our people and our company and our brand. And I don't think we'd be where we are without him. So he's done a great job for us.
So when you hire a marketing company like that, are you providing them with content, or are they coming out and generating content? Like, are they coming and taking pictures and recording videos, or are you just giving them that they then use as marketing material?
Yeah, both. I mean, we supply them with that. We send them a lot of the stuff, and they also come out here and we do a lot of filming and just informational videos. We've started a new thing called Ring Brothers University, where we're not saying it's the right way to do it. We're just showing people how we do things, and I think it's got a tremendous following, and they can find that obviously on our website, ringbrothers.com, and it's just it's kind of giving back, to people that have bought into our brand over the years.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, it's interesting to hear when a company has a marketing team for them to help spread the word about their products, because as a small shop, you're usually just doing it yourself with your phone and your Facebook account.
There's no doubt about it. But
yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, we wouldn't be our brand wouldn't be what it is without Con Media. All they've done for us. So they've done a great job, and I think it's showing.
So what's your 1 year plan for the business? What are you guys working on to kind of have something new or maybe ready to go this time next year?
We've got a lot of irons in the fire. Obviously, our big car for next year debut at SEMA will be this Camaro that we're doing for this guy from Belgium. We've got a lot of other smaller projects that, it's weird. You go to the SEMAs and you go to them big events, and we've been doing it for about 14 years, but probably 11 years in a row we showed up with a new significant vehicle. And I think this year will be the first year in 11, 12 years that we won't show up with anything, off the charts or really bizarre.
Okay.
And it's weird because it just kind of happened this year just because of the timing of things. I mean, we have things in the works that won't be done, but the funny part of it is you get there, what people don't understand is every year you got a different owner with a different budget and a different plan, and sometimes the stars align and sometimes they don't.
What about, looking farther in the future? What's your, we call it a big, hairy, audacious goal. What's your 5-year plan for the business?
I would really like to get our parts business growing to obviously that's where I want to see it. I would love to be able to make some money from my shoulders up while I'm sleeping.
Yep.
Yep. grow our website sales, and product development is huge for me. I mean, your body can only do so much, and you need to use what's above your shoulders every now and then.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There's only so many hours in a day to build custom cars, but
that is correct.
You can scale manufacturing.
Correct. Yeah.
What's kind of maybe an action item, you can give our listeners to help improve their situation, whether they own a shop or they're working at a shop, what's some advice you can give them to maybe improve how things are going?
Obviously, do what comes out of you. Don't ever chase anybody. I've never chased anybody. I've never really bought hot rod magazines or anything unless, I wanted to see something in particular. But I do what comes out of you. I mean, I've never really tried to copy anybody or anything. It was flattering to always see what you've done years ago on something else in maybe a little different manner. But do what comes out of you. And obviously, people are everything. Make sure there's a warm body that answers the phone, because drives every one of us crazy when there's nobody on the other side after you've purchased something or have done work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if it ain't good enough for you, it ain't good enough for the guy you're trying to sell it to.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good point. Good advice. If you don't want to use it, nobody else does. So just kind of ending, this is kind of a fun question that I always like to ask people. What is your daily driver car, going to the groceries or going to run errands? What do you just get in to just go drive?
I got a 2015 2500 pickup.
So your parts run pickup, huh?
That's my daily driver. And when I get home at night and I want to just go screw around, I've got a little John Deere Ranger with a cab with heat and air and a stereo in it.
Uh-huh.
We just go tool around in that. But I'm fortunate enough to have a little property where we can enjoy it. So
that's great. That's great. Well, to close out here, how do people, go find out more information about your business? Your website and your Facebook page. Where do they need to go to see more about your products?
Yeah, check us out on ringbrothers.com, and obviously like us on Facebook. We're always updating things, and it's just a good place to see what's going on in the shop and stay in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to do this interview with us. I, really appreciate hearing your story and giving us some advice about how you guys have become successful.
Yeah, well, thank you for calling us, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the support from everybody.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests. Thanks for listening, and good luck.